Fiancé confessed he regrets his ex. I canceled the wedding, and he begged to come back. My fiancée confessed that she regrets leaving her ex. I canceled the wedding, and now she wants to come back with me. I'm Alvaro. I'm 29 years old, and I work as a paramedic. I was engaged to Luciana, 27, who is an elementary school teacher. We had been together for 3 years, and the wedding was planned for next spring. I own the house, and she moved in about a year ago. Things started to change in February. Luciana became distant, spent more time on her phone, protected it as if hiding something. Before, we had no problem with that. If her mobile rang while she was showering, I would answer it without drama. Suddenly, she always left it face down, took it to the bathroom, disconnected it if it was charging in a visible place. When I asked her if everything was okay, she told me it was stress from work or the wedding. I tried to trust, but something didn't add up. Still, I decided not to insist. I focused on working more. I started taking extra shifts to save for the honeymoon. We had talked about going to Hawaii because she had never been there and dreamed of seeing the islands. I ended up working more than 60 hours per week, which meant less time at home and less opportunity to notice the changes in her behavior. The weeks before the disaster, she was no longer the same. She kept talking about the wedding, about our future, but everything felt mechanical, as if she were playing a role instead of truly living it. I kept refusing to see the obvious. I thought maybe it was stress, that everything would return to normal after we got married. I was completely wrong. One Tuesday night, we were going out to dinner in an Italian restaurant that she had chosen. Nothing special, just a midweek date. I was looking forward to spending time together because we had barely seen each other that week. When I arrived home at 5 in the afternoon, she was already ready, sitting on the couch looking at her phone. I said hello. She barely responded. I asked her if she was ready, and she just said yes, with a tone as flat as if she were doing me a favor. At the restaurant, we were seated at a table by the window. I asked her again what was wrong for the third time, and she put her phone aside and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her, a mix of nerves and excitement. I need to tell you something, she said. Mauricio wrote to me. Mauricio, her ex-boyfriend from college. I felt an emptiness in my stomach. She told me that he had found her on Instagram a few weeks ago, told her that he had been thinking about her and regretted leaving her, but they had been talking a lot, especially about how they should never have separated. I asked her if she had been writing with her ex for weeks without telling me anything. She replied that at first it was just an innocent conversation, catching up, but then the feelings came back. What they had was different, intense, passionate. And then she dropped the bombshell. You know, Alvaro, with Mauricio, I felt like I was drowning, but in the best sense. With you, I feel like I'm floating in a kiddie pool. It's safe, shallow, and boring. I can't help but wonder if this is really love, or if I'm just settling for you because it's the easiest thing. Maybe Mauricio is better for me. Just like that, without warning, she called me boring. She said I was a convenient option, that her ex was better for her. There, in the middle of a restaurant, I stood staring at her for about 30 seconds without saying anything. She started to look nervous, as if she was just beginning to understand what she had just said, but she didn't retract it. Then, there's nothing stopping you, I told her. Finally, she went pale. I told her that if she thought her ex was better for her, I had no problem with her going with him, but not while she was still living in my house. She tried to backtrack, to explain, but I had already made a decision. I left $40 on the table, got up and told her I was going home, but I hoped to see her packing when I arrived. The drive back was surreal. 3 years together, 6 months engaged, and in a matter of minutes, she told me I was her consolation prize, that a guy who left her years ago was better than me, the one who offered her stability and a home. I kept repeating her words in my head, drowning in the best way, versus floating in a kiddie pool. Safe, shallow, boring, convenient. When I arrived, she was on the couch crying, but I no longer had patience for her tears. I asked her to pack. While she talked, I went to the kitchen and canceled our joint account for my mobile. I also called the bank to block any other access. It took her about 2 hours to pack. I just sat at the kitchen table and let her do it. When she was ready, she stood at the door with the suitcases. She looked at me as if waiting for me to change my mind. She asked me if I wanted the engagement ring back. I told her yes. She left it on the coffee table. Before leaving, she said, "You're going to throw away 3 years over one conversation." "You were the one who threw it all away," I replied. "I'm just cleaning up the mess." And that's how it ended. She left, and I was alone again, in a silent house with an engagement ring on the table, wondering what on earth had just happened. The next day, calls started. First my mother, then my sister Carla, and my father. And there are 2 months until a wedding, and your fiancé suddenly moves out and news flies. I told everyone the same thing. Luciana chose to be with someone else, and I wasn't going to compete for the love of my own fiancé. My parents were furious in my defense. My mother wanted to know if there was another man. I told her about about Mauricio, and she exploded. She said Luciana was destroying something good for an absurd fantasy. My father was more practical. He asked me if I needed help canceling wedding vendors. Carla was direct. She called her foolish, and although simple, it lifted my spirits. The most difficult call was from Luciana's parents. Her mother called me crying, begging me to try to fix things with her daughter. She said that Luciana was just scared about the wedding, that it was normal to have doubts. I tried to explain to her that this went beyond that. She didn't want to listen. Her father left me a voicemail saying I was giving up too easily, that relationships required effort. I didn't respond to either. What was I going to tell them? That their daughter called me boring and easy to replace with her ex. She had been emotionally cheating on me for weeks. They weren't going to want to hear that anyway. The most complicated thing was our group of friends. Within a few days, they started writing to me to find out what had happened. From the beginning, I decided I wasn't going to speak badly of Luciana, but I wasn't going to lie to protect her either. So when someone asked, I just said, ask Luciana about Mauricio. That was enough. People aren't foolish. They could connect the dots. And deep down, I wanted it to be her who had to explain herself. For her to be the one who said why she threw everything away for someone from the past. Within a week, the whole group, about 15 people in total, already knew the essentials. The reactions were mixed, but most were on my side. All my friends completely agreed with me. They understood why I couldn't continue with someone who basically confessed that I had been their plan B. Some women told me I was being too radical, that maybe I should have considered couples therapy or given her time to clarify her feelings. But no, I'm not going to attend sessions to convince someone to choose me instead of their ex. I wasn't going to stay waiting for my fiancé to figure out if she wanted a life with me or with another guy. That's not how relationships work. If you're enjoying this story of betrayal and consequences, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Comment below. Did he make the right decision? Let's keep going. The worst thing was dealing with everything related to the wedding. We had already made advance payments. The venue, catering, photography, the DJ, the flowers. Disaster. Some vendors were understanding when I explained the situation. The photographer, for example, was empathetic. She told me she had been in the business for 20 years and had seen it all. She only charged me a small penalty. Others weren't so generous. The event venue kept our entire deposit, arguing that there was no longer time to rent the date again. The caterer even wanted to charge me for the food we had ordered. In total, I lost about $8,000 between cancellations and non-refundable deposits. $8,000 to discover that the woman who was going to marry me thought I was boring. The curious thing is that I never asked Luciana to assume even a cent of those losses. I could have taken her to court to divide the costs, but I preferred to cut everything at the root. Losing that money hurt, of course, but it was better than continuing to deal with her. And that wasn't even the most complicated thing. The most difficult thing was communicating to family and friends that the wedding was being canceled. Every call was a blow. Everyone wanted details to know if there was any possibility of reconciliation. The strangest thing was the reaction of some of Luciana's coworkers. 3 teachers from her school wrote to me, not to defend her, but to see how I was doing and to tell me very clearly that she had made a big mistake. It made it clear to me how things were being handled in her work environment. Apparently, Luciana had told them that we had simply grown apart, that our goals no longer coincided, a typical thing to look good, but they're teachers, not fools, and they surely saw beyond her version. Besides, if she was acting as weird at work as she did at home, they probably already suspected something. A couple of weeks after she moved out, I got the rumor that she was uploading things to social media with phrases like, follow your heart and don't settle for less than you deserve. That infuriated me like few things. She was making it seem like I wasn't enough, that she had grown and left me behind, but I didn't respond. I didn't post anything to give my version. I didn't try to publicly clear my name. I thought sooner or later the truth would come out on its own, and getting into a virtual battle with my ex-fiancé didn't interest me in the slightest. The hardest thing was returning to routine in an empty house. For more than a year, I had gotten used to having someone, when I came back, someone to cook with, watch a series, or just talk about the day. From one moment to the next, the silence became overwhelming, so I threw myself into work. I took all the extra shifts I could. Keeping myself busy helped, and the extra money didn't hurt considering the financial loss from the wedding. Tomas, my ambulance partner, knew what I was going through and was incredible. He covered for me when I needed to call vendors or resolve pending issues. The other colleagues also supported me. Several had gone through separations and told me that all things considered, I had been lucky to discover the truth before signing a marriage certificate. They were right, but it still hurt. Almost a month after everything exploded, I started to feel like I could look ahead. The shock and anger were subsiding, and I began to think about what to do with my life. Maybe travel somewhere I always wanted to know, perhaps renovate the house, or simply concentrate on work and let things flow. And just when I was starting to regain my balance, things took an unexpected turn. During 6 weeks after the separation, ironically, my life improved quite a bit. It sounds weird, I know, but after getting over the initial bad experience, experience, I realized how much weight I had taken off my shoulders. I was no longer tormented by her distant attitudes or her obsession with the phone. We no longer argued about guests or floral arrangements. I could come home without having to analyze every word I had said during the day. I blocked her number and all her social media accounts as soon as she left. If she tried to contact me, I never found out, and honestly I didn't want to. She had made her decision clear when she told me Mauricio was better for her. Let her go with her college ex and leave me alone. It was then that I started chatting with Natalia, a nurse from the emergency area. Everything very casual at first. Conversations between shifts. She was nice, intelligent, and with a great sense of humor. And most importantly, zero drama with ex-boyfriends. The difference was abysmal. Natalia laughed at my silly jokes, was interested in my day, remembered things I'd told her, those little attentions that Luciana had stopped having long before we ended. I wasn't looking for anything serious, and she understood that. We were two people sharing good times without pressure, and that after so much stress was a relief. One day, while fixing some things at home, my friend Santiago called me laughing out loud. At first, I could barely understand what he was saying. "Dude, you're not going to be able to believe it," he told me between laughs. It turns out he works with a guy whose girlfriend is friends with one of Luciana's co-workers. Small world, many connections. According to his contact, Mauricio had ended things with Luciana. "Your ex is alone," he told me without stopping laughing. Mauricio left her. I sat on the couch, trying to digest the information. He left her. How? I asked. He used her for about 6 weeks, and then told her he no longer felt the same, that he needed to be sure of his emotions or something like that. The height of it. After all that epic love story, about how their connection was so strong and real, Mauricio had used her as a pastime and had discarded her again, just like he did in college. According to what they told Santiago, Mauricio was direct. He told Luciana that getting back together with her made him see that they had both changed too much, that theirs had been pure nostalgia, and that he didn't see a future together. All of that he could have thought about before breaking an engagement, but no. And to top it off, it seems she didn't take it well at all. According to Santiago, she was calling him insistently until he ended up blocking her. I felt a strange mix of emotions when I found out. Part of me felt vindicated, as if everything I had sensed about Mauricio was true from the beginning, that sooner or later he would end up hurting Luciana. Another part, I admit, wanted to laugh at the irony, but above all I felt relief to have dodged that bullet. During the following days, I got more details from different sides. They told me that Luciana had been very active on social media, posting phrases about learning to love oneself and recognizing one's own value just before Mauricio left her. Suddenly, all her posts disappeared and she remained in complete digital silence. Apparently, she was also saying at work that she was discovering what true love was, that she had never felt so happy. Her co-workers at the school initially supported her, but when the truth came out and they found out that Mauricio had only used her, many felt uncomfortable with the way she had handled everything. My sister Carla told me that Luciana's mother had called our mom crying, saying that her daughter was having a hard time and asking if there was any possibility that I would talk to her. My mother, very politely but firmly, told her no, that Luciana had made her decisions and now had to assume her consequences. A week after Santiago's call, I was shopping at the supermarket when I ran into Rebecca, a friend we had in common. She had been at our engagement party and was even going to be one of the bridesmaids. The encounter was awkward, but she was very kind. "I just want you to know," she told me, "that most of us believe you acted completely correctly. What Luciana did has no justification. You had every right in the world to walk away." It was comforting to hear it. Sometimes, when you're wrapped up in a situation like that, you doubt whether you overreacted or made the wrong decision. But having someone who knew both of us confirm that I did the right thing gave me enormous peace. Rebecca also confirmed what I already suspected about Mauricio. Luciana really believed he would leave everything to be with her. She even talked as if they were already planning to move in together. It was completely delusional. Mauricio lived about 3 hours away with his job, his routine, and probably other women he was dating. Thinking he was going to abandon everything for a woman he had already left once was absurd. That's what happens when you cling to a fantasy based on nostalgia and emotional infidelity. You convince yourself that your ex is that perfect person you let escape, when in reality, they already showed you once that they didn't want to be with you. Shortly after, Luciana tried to contact me. Since I had already blocked her number, she started calling from others. I didn't answer any. Then she went directly to the fire station where Santiago works part-time and asked him to give me a message. She told him she was sorry and that she had made a serious mistake. Santiago, without beating around the bush, told her not to bother him anymore. He told me later that she looked bad, as if she hadn't slept or eaten in days. Part of me felt sorry, but a bigger part thought she deserved every second of that suffering. Since she couldn't get my attention that way, she changed strategy. She posted a kind of long testimony on Facebook about our relationship and separation. I didn't see it directly because I had her blocked, but Carla sent me screenshots. It was a complete misrepresentation of the facts. According to her version, I never truly loved her and didn't know how to handle her romantic past. She said I abandoned her just when she needed me most, and that I wasn't prepared to face the problems of an adult relationship. Not a single word about Mauricio, not a mention of the fact that she told me I was boring and convenient compared to her ex. Nothing, just a story where she was the victim and I was the villain. The comments, however, didn't take long to turn against her. Many of her mutual friends openly questioned her. One wrote, "Didn't you leave him for your ex?" Another put, "That's not how I remember it happened." Even people I didn't know commented that her story didn't make sense. In the end, she ended up deleting the post after a few hours, but it was too late. Everyone saw that she was trying to clean her image at my expense, and most didn't believe her. That's when I understood she was desperate. When someone resorts to making things up on social media to make their ex look bad, it's because they hit rock bottom. And I honestly was glad not to be in that chaos anymore. 3 months later, my 30th birthday arrived. I'm not one to have big celebrations. For me, it was always just another day. But in my family, that's experienced differently, especially when it comes to important dates. And they weren't going to let me hide just because I had recently returned to being single. In recent weeks, I've been going out more often with Natalia. I told her about the birthday. She was enthusiastic about meeting my family. It already seemed like a good sign to me. The day of the party, I woke up in a good mood. 30 years old, with my own house, a stable job, loyal friends, and someone by my side who didn't think I was boring or convenient. Not bad, considering the emotional place where I had been just a few months ago. Natalia arrived around 3 with a spectacular chocolate cake that she had prepared herself. She remembered that I once mentioned how much I hated the artificial flavor of frosting on industrial cakes, so she decided to make it from scratch. Gestures like that say much more than they seem. My mother adored her from the first moment. They spent about 20 minutes talking about cooking and recipes. My father, who was grilling hamburgers, even invited her to try his famous secret sauce, something he doesn't do with anyone. Carla signaled me aside and whispered that she liked her for me, which was shocking because she never liked any of my previous partners. The difference with Luciana was abysmal. She always seemed to be fulfilling an obligation when attending family gatherings. She was polite, yes, but distant, checking her phone all the time and then complaining about how long everything had been or that my father told the same stories over and over. In contrast, Natalia seemed to genuinely enjoy herself. She asked my mother to tell her embarrassing anecdotes about me from childhood. She laughed at my father's bad jokes. She played cornhole with Tomas and carried herself as if she had been part of the group forever. Around 6, we were all sitting around the fire pit my father built the previous summer. Good food, good conversation, and some coworkers telling funny anecdotes from past interventions. I thought, this is one of the best birthdays I've had in a long time, definitely better than last year's, when Luciana spent all day glued to her cell phone, ignoring me. And just then they knocked on the door. At first I thought it would be a neighbor, maybe to ask us to turn down the volume or move a car. It was Saturday afternoon, and yes, we had made quite a bit of noise. But when I opened the door, it was Luciana standing on my porch with a forced smile and a wrapped gift in her hands, as if absolutely nothing had happened between us. "Happy birthday, Alvaro." I stood staring at her in silence. There was something different about her, as if the weight of the last few months showed on her face. She was thinner, or perhaps unkempt. She had marked dark circles and an exhausted expression. Her hair, shorter, seemed to have been cut hastily or at some cheap salon. She feigned confidence, but it was evident she was desperate inside. "What are you doing here, Luciana? I brought you a gift. Can I come in for a minute?" Behind me, the conversation in the yard was dying down. The guests were probably wondering who had arrived, if everything was okay. The last thing I wanted was to ruin my birthday with this kind of scene, and even less with my family present and with Natalia. "You can't show up like this without warning," I replied. I know. It's your birthday, and I felt bad about how we ended. I just wanted to give you this, and if we could talk for a while." She extended the gift to me as if it were a peace offering. Surely something she had bought months ago when we were still together, before she decided Mauricio was a better option than me. Everything seemed unreal to me. My ex-fiancé showing up at my party after telling me I was boring and predictable, after having left me for someone else, and that someone else also left her. Talk about what? About us. About how foolish I was. About how much you miss what we had. I let out a laugh, and that disconcerted her. "You miss what we had." We're talking about that boring and convenient relationship. The kiddie pool one. Her face lit up. She surely hoped those words no longer hurt me, or that time had softened them. "But you don't forget when the person you love makes it clear to you that you were only their second option." She tried to retract. She said she was upset when she said it. She didn't really mean it, but we both both knew she did. Nobody throws such specific and cruel comments if they haven't thought about them more than once. Then, the front door opened behind me and Natalia came out to the porch. "Everything okay here?" Luciana's expression was a mix of surprise, indignation, and fury. In seconds, she went from hopeful to decomposed. Look said it all. I shouldn't be with someone new, much less with someone who looked as self-assured and as attractive as Natalia. "And who is she?" asked Luciana, raising her voice with a shrill tone. Natalia introduced herself with complete calm, immediately deducing that she was Luciana. She was polite and neutral. She didn't fall for provocations or let herself be dragged into drama. She just acknowledged the situation and maintained composure. "You're already with someone else," Luciana shouted. "It's been barely 2 months. Actually, almost 3, I corrected. 3 months since you decided to go back with Mauricio. And yes, I'm dating someone who really wants to be with me." That completely destabilized her. She started screaming that I never fought for our relationship, that I replaced her as if she had never meant anything. It was typical projection. She was the one who destroyed what was ours. But now I was the villain for moving on with my life. Natalia remained at my side, uncomfortable but firm. She didn't intervene, didn't defend herself, or enter into absurd arguments. She let Luciana sink alone in her own show. The screams caught attention. My father appeared from the side of the house, assessed the scene with one look, and asked Luciana to leave. She refused and continued yelling. Carla also came out and was much more direct. She told her to leave immediately or they would call the authorities. My family had never fully sympathized with Luciana, but out of respect for me, they always remained cordial. Now that we were no longer together, they had no reason to keep pretending. Carla, especially, never had much patience and didn't bother hiding it. But Luciana wasn't planning to leave just like that. She entered a kind of emotional collapse, realizing that her big romantic gesture wasn't going as she had imagined. Maybe she hoped that by arriving with a gift, I would fall surrendered, forget everything, and accept her back. Instead, what she had was an altercation in my yard with my family watching and my new partner at the side. Nothing like the redemption scene she had surely idealized. Finally, she walked furiously toward her car, but before getting in, she turned one last time. "This is absurd, Alvaro. Don't you think it would be easier if we got back together? We have 3 years of history." I watched her from the porch. She was there with smudged makeup, a gift in hand for a relationship she herself had destroyed. Just 3 months ago, she had been my fiancé. Now she was a stranger, emotionally overwhelmed in front of my house for the simple fact that I had dared to continue with my life. "Easier for whom?" I replied. "Because for me, it's quite easy like this." She got in the car and left burning rubber like a spoiled teenager. I returned to the party. Natalia squeezed my hand without saying anything. My family, although upset, soon left the incident behind. The rest of the night was surprisingly pleasant, as if the episode had been just a strange pause in the middle of a happy evening. A month after the episode of my birthday, I got a rumor. Apparently, Luciana had gone back to living with her parents, without someone to share expenses with. She couldn't afford a place on her own with her teacher's salary. The irony was evident. She had left behind a stable relationship with someone who had his own house and a solid career, all for a guy who only used her for 6 weeks and then left her. I also found out she had taken a leave from work. I don't know if it was something she decided on her own or if it was suggested by the school after her behavior began to be erratic. In any case, it couldn't have been easy to give explanations to her co-workers about why, after being engaged, she suddenly went back to living with her parents and was single. Santiago kept telling me all the gossip, even more than I needed to know. I found out from him that Luciana had not only tried to contact Mauricio again, but was looking for other ex-boyfriends too, as if she were going through a list of failed relationships, trying to see who would still be willing to take her back. It's sad if you think about it coldly, but that's the price of burning bridges for no valid reason. The most absurd thing was knowing how Mauricio reacted when he found out she showed up at my house during my birthday. Apparently, someone told him about her little visit, and he got quite upset. He called her unbalanced, and went around saying through mutual acquaintances that he was grateful to have walked away in time. The same guy who convinced her to leave me now spoke badly of her with anyone who would listen. But that's how guys like Mauricio are. Very skilled at seducing with words and putting fairy tale ideas in someone's head, but the first to disappear when things get complicated. He painted her an epic love story, as if they were souls destined to reunite, and then disappeared as soon as he got what he wanted. And of course, now she was the problem. The truth is, I stopped paying attention to anything related to Luciana quite quickly. I had more important matters to attend to, like continuing to build something authentic with Natalia and focusing on growing professionally. That whole experience taught me what I really want in a relationship. Someone who chooses me from the beginning, not someone I have to convince that I'm worth it. Approximately 6 months after our separation, Natalia and I decided to live together. She was practically spending all her time at my house, and it made sense also from an economic standpoint. But most importantly, it felt right. I didn't have that feeling of uncertainty or fear of commitment. With the right person, those decisions flow. They don't feel forced. A couple of months later, I ran into an old colleague of Luciana's at the supermarket, Rebecca, the same one who at the time told me I had handled the situation with great maturity. She told me that Luciana had gone back to teaching, but at another school on the other side of the city. According to her, she needed to start over, away from those who knew what had happened with Mauricio. She also mentioned that Luciana had been asking about me. She wanted to know if I was still with the nurse, as she called Natalia, and if I seemed happy. The simple fact that she was still aware of my life through third parties was a clear sign that she wasn't as well as she appeared. But it was no longer my business. I had turned the page. I was building a new life alongside someone who really wanted to be with me, and I wasn't interested in the slightest in the chaos Luciana had on her hands now. There are people who learn from their mistakes and mature. Others simply repeat the same wrong decisions and wonder why their lives don't change. I would bet that wedding dress she bought is still hanging in her parents' closet as a costly reminder of the future she left behind for an illusion. Meanwhile, I was moving forward alongside someone who saw in me a partner, not a backup plan. A year after that separation, Natalia and I got engaged. Nothing scandalous or theatrical, just a quiet proposal during a trip we had planned together. And it was then that Luciana finally broke the silence. I received a long message from an unknown number. She had surely used someone else's phone because I still had her blocked. The text was extensive, full of apologies, explanations, pleas to have one last conversation. She said she had started therapy, that she had realized that leaving me had been the worst mistake of her life, that Mauricio was only a mirage, and that I was the real thing. She claimed she thought about me every day and deeply regretted it. She insisted that now she was willing to fight for us, and that she wanted to see me to talk about a possible reconciliation. I didn't respond. I didn't even mark the message as read. Luciana had already made clear what she thought the day she chose to leave. She didn't need to say anything more. The message arrived late, when everything was already said and done. Maybe she thought there was still something she could hold on to, some part of me that hadn't closed a chapter, but it wasn't like that. I had moved on with my life, not out of spite, but because I understood that I deserved to be with someone who values me from the beginning, without doubts or comparisons. I was no longer interested in reliving old mistakes or giving space to ghosts from the past. Luciana was a hard lesson, yes, but necessary. She taught me that love is not begged for or imposed. That when someone really wants to be with you, they don't leave at the first attempt of something better.